Hello everyone and welcome back. So the embargoes have finally dropped and we can start talking about Bashiva, Tawan, and also the Tigerman units that will be coming in patch 8.0 and its adjoining DLC. So we'll be able to talk about both the DLC and the FLC in this video. As you can tell, it's very much themed on just Tigerman and one mortal human. But the tigers do vary and they do have different uses, so don't you worry, it's not just like, oh, the same thing over and over again. The hero characters are obviously focusing around being spellcasters but decent at melee, and the Lord is there to help you out for other types of themed armies if you so wish. All these units are going to be available to the other Cathayan factions too, so if you've got access to Yuan Bo, Miao Yin, or Zhao Ming, you can mix and match as you need, but yes, I can tell you from a campaign point of view, you can of course go full Tiger if you want to. So we're going to start off with the first unit, and that is the generic Tiger Warriors. They come with additional hand weapons, they're anti-infantry, and they're considered damage dealers. Stat-wise, they're not too bad. Keep in mind that they're supposed to be quite fast, and I think that's represented by their abilities too. Tiger Warrior, which is used by all Tiger Warriors, increases their speed, their charge bonus, and gives them ferocious ambush. Which means that they're going to get a massive amount of charge speed, speed bonus, charge bonus, and also devastating flanker. You can use them as frontline units, but they excel the most when they're coming in from the side. Thankfully, one of the mods with the test maps that change no stats, by the way, this mod still works during the early access periods, which means I can show that in practice. Chaos Warriors are quite strong and obviously the Lord is available, but I feel like the Tiger Warriors are able to do a decent amount of damage overall. Remember, these are supposed to be like a skirmishing type of troop. I know a lot of people were expecting them to be monstrous infantry, but they're more on the lines of standard infantry, if not just a little bit larger. The great thing about them is they're incredibly versatile. So while you might not be seeing the most amazing type of damage right now, you do have to remember that obviously this is in a custom battle and things get quite different when you start looking towards campaign with technology bonuses, lord and hero skills, and all the rest. Their mobility is such a massive boon to their usefulness. They can move around the battlefield very quickly, and the fact of the matter is that charge bonus is wonderful. Able to really hit some targets quite quickly, especially as, remember, in Grand Cathay, there are a lot of maps that they can easily ambush in, move around, and then strike the enemy from behind. I feel like it's going to be a lot of ambushes here, and obviously Creative Assembly have been kinda just hinting at that. Big tiger ambushes all the time. So I can't talk about the campaign stuff too much, but I will say that yeah, I have been fielding quite a few armies there if I'm trying to get something just for extra support. But I've been using them in the front line quite a lot too, as I do feel like they are very durable. Now these are a tier 2 unit, meaning that you'll be picking them up quite early into your campaigns, but don't expect them to be the best of the best. They will still suffer against, say for example, Marauders of Khorne with additional hand weapons, because Khornate units are generally the better types there, but that's always going to be quite expected. But I would put these guys up there with Chaos Warriors in general, at least undivided ones, and would say that they do perform a little bit better than Jade Warriors. Do they form a basis of your army? Yes. I feel like you can easily put them into your generic Cathayan armies without too much of a problem, which is good because at the end of the day, units added in DLC you'd like to see being used more and more, unlike say for example Shadows of Change, which I'm not trying to like bring that back, it's just more of the case of the Centaurs of Tzeentch really didn't have a lot of uses, whereas the Zangors did. It's finding those holes that you need, and Cathay needed some fast moving skirmishing troops. There are of course different types of Tigermen, and we're going to be talking about all of those, so they do have very similar uses, but in different ways. Okay, so the next unit are the Tiger Warrior Stalkers. So these are a throwing disc infantry unit, meaning that they've got some ammunition but not a lot. It's more on the same lines of one of those skirmishing types, pretty much like the Chameleon Stalkers but not focusing on explosions. They've also got Stalk, fire whilst move, meaning that they'll be able to fire as they get into the enemy lines, and obviously dodge. Now the benefit of this unit also is that they do have some higher physical resistance. I'm not sure if that's intended for just these ones, because some stuff could change. Remember that even though this DLC is launching very, very soon, they could bring in a patch and change some stuff quite quickly. Stat-wise, again, pretty damn good. And the difference between these units and the Tiger Warriors is that these ones don't have additional hand weapons, so they'll be focusing more on being in and out. You can use these to cycle charge, by the way. The high speed that they've already got is quite good. They're also tier 3, meaning that it's gonna take a small while to get those units recruited, but definitely worth it. So usage in battle is the same way. You can put them at the front, or you can get into the side with the flanks and the rears as per usual. What I will say is that they are very quick. And I know I've said that before, but they're too quick to actually get all their ammunition out, because they're going to get that speed bonus and literally just fire once. Maybe some of the other units will fire a second time, but you won't get the full ammunition out, which is perfectly fine, as they do fairly well in melee, and that means that you do have a little ammunition to hit another unit with, or if you do want to wait, you can shoot twice and then attack. I found that I've used the Stalkers a bit more. It would have been nice if the Stalkers would have also had additional hand weapons, but I guess that would have just negated the use of the standard Tiger Warriors, so I understand that. It's just, you know, they still always have that weapon on them, so they should be able to use that as a weapon. I am pleasantly surprised, however, that all the Tiger Men do have different weapons. So yes, they are effectively the same units in that regard, but they are using different methods of combat, which ultimately does mean that you can have quite a lot of variance when it comes to your army building, especially as you start playing with Bashiva, or if you're fielding them with the Cathayan Dragons. They can hold out their own versus Chaos Warriors. I've been using a lot of Chaos stuff for testing here, mostly because the theme with the Tigers is that they're quite active and they're fighting against the forces of Chaos. Apparently the Tiger Warriors and also the Tiger General herself, right, the White Tiger, appears every time there's a new Everchosen, despite never really existing in the lore prior. She was slightly to the left. But I think it's pretty obvious that the Stalkers perform incredibly well from what you've been able to see on these clips. I would say, though, it would have been nice if they would have had a little bit more ammunition. That would have just made them a lot better. The Chameleon Stalkers for the Lizardmen are a little bit better in that regard because they have explosives, so I feel like in some cases, if they're not going to have explosives here, for the Tiger Warriors specifically, they should be able to shoot a little bit more. Make them a little bit more useful. This means that you can have range weapons when you're getting into combat with multiple units, so up it from 2 to 4, and yeah, I think that would just elevate them a lot more in terms of battle usage overall. Maybe I'm wrong there, but it's something that's been kind of bothering me. Now, I'm not saying that the unit's bad whatsoever. I've been pretty much glazing it throughout the whole clip, but it's more of the case of they could be a little bit better. Okay, so the third and final unit before we get into Lord and Hero options is the Ironclaw Tiger Warriors. Now, these ones really surprised me because I was not expecting a unit with a Guan Dao, which is essentially a glaive. They're armored, armor-piercing, anti-large, but they perform very, very well against armored units too. They're very, very good. So, of course, Ferocious Ambush, once again. They've got Charge Reflection, which is pretty damn good. Obviously, they can hide in forests. They've got Charge Defense versus Large. These guys are surprisingly high tier. Of course, a tier 4 unit, so it does mean that you're going to take a while before you're able to recruit them, but they really show their capabilities in battle as soon as you start launching them in. You still got all the other benefits the other Tiger Warriors do, so obviously you've got the increased speed, the increased charge resistance, and charge bonus. The idea here is, yeah, again, put them in the front. You can have them on the front or on the side without too much of a problem. The great thing about the Tigers, again, is that, but they can really hurt Chaos Warriors. You can see that on screen right now, which I think is one of the strongest benefits that they've had when it's come to this. The extra armor piercing is so useful when you're dealing with Chaos armies, or in general, any faction which has very heavily armored, pretty much tanky units. I've been testing them against like Warriors of Chaos. In my own campaign, I went straight for any heavily armored faction that I could find just to see how they could work. Same thing with my own testing. They handle themselves pretty well against Nurgle Warriors or Tzeentch Warriors, which are relatively tankier compared to the others. They could also hold out quite well versus Khorne, and I was pleasantly surprised to see how well they could hold out versus Chosen of Chaos alongside a Lord there, because obviously with these testing things, CA don't have proper like testing tools for us to have like just units showing up and not having a lord support it, for example. In general, these units have exceeded expectations, and I think that that's something that needs to be said. I think a lot of people were expecting Tigermen with bows, myself included, so seeing a Guandao come in to do a decent amount of sweeping was really, really good. The higher tier units obviously do perform a lot better depending on the faction. We have in fact seen some DLCs where higher tier units end up being pretty forgettable and just used as a gimmick, so I'm pretty happy about the Iron Claws. These are the ones I think we've seen more from Games Workshop's artwork, just in general, given the armor patterns, and I feel like it fits really well. If these ever become miniatures for the old world, I will definitely be really excited to paint these guys up, even though orange paints aren't really the best to use. Now, these units of course can be used when fighting large entities at the same time, so it's not just against the basic foot troops. Against large entities, they're very good at dealing with a lot of punishment. Testing wise, it was mostly against ogres, and I used it against plague ogres of Nurgle because they are some of the best. They still suffered against those plague ogres, but keep in mind they are so strong. The idea there was to see how long they'd last, not if they would last. And I'm pretty happy with my testing, just seeing them charge into ogres and also waiting for the ogres to charge in. Both results were quite impressive overall. They can dish out as much as they can hold. Obviously anything that's got armor piercing will hit them quite hard too, but overall, yeah, very, very good units. I think all three units of the Tigermen perform quite well. The animation speed is quite good. Keep in mind that the damage output is tied to your animation speed for your units, so seeing them being very quick, yeah, surprising there. I think that we should have had a few more Tigermen variants though, but of course this is a much smaller DLC, so they're not really going to put that much into that. Okay, Claw Speakers coming in. So these are your new generic hero. And you've got access to 3 laws of magic not normally available to Grand Cathay. The Law of Life for healing, the Law of Beasts for a little bit of buffs and also summoning some monsters, and also the Law of Shadows, a very popular damage dealing Law of Magic thanks to Pit of Shades. This gives you a lot more usability, and there are some law traits that we shall talk about when it comes to the campaign stuff, because each of the laws does have specific traits only available to them. Basically, I count that as a precursor to the Law of Ind or the Law of Kamau. So these are all priests of Kamau, keep that in mind. But these spellcasters are very different to your normal spellcasters. Most spellcasters can be quite squishy because they're generally, you know, basic humans, basic elves. These are melee experts, meaning that you can bring them into combat and they will be able to hold out their own. They're not amazing, keep that in mind, and yes, they will take a decent amount of damage, so you do need to support them with other Tiger Warriors, but the fact of the matter is, these are spellcasters that you can easily have in the front line without having to worry too much, which I think is quite important, not just because it helps Grand Cathay quite a lot, but it fits with the theme of the spellcasters. I was in fact quite worried that Games Workshop or Creative Assembly would see their design ethos as much weaker. You can see that there is a decent amount there of AoE damage, because they do these little pulse attacks, and those are really cool actually. The AoE is very small, but it's very noticeable. Now, don't expect them to be able to fight without too much of a problem against like Chaos Lords. They still will need support, and really you'll want to use the Lord option more there. But you'll definitely be bringing them more in with your armies. That doesn't mean that you're going to be invalidating your Alchemists or your Astromancers at all, really, because all of them have access to different laws of magic. It just means that you'll be able to have your Astromancers and your Alchemists supported by another spellcaster without having to leave a melee hero out there. If anything, you might just see Gate Masters being used a little bit less, but it completely depends on your army loadouts. Again, very big fan of this. The more that gets added in and the more laws of magic that get added into different factions, where appropriate, of course, helps with the construction of armies and range of diversity. So that I am all very happy to see. I found myself using them quite often in campaign, and that's always good. You want to be incentivized to use the new toys. The Tiger Warrior Sawai, or Sawai, I've heard it both ways at this point, so my brain is just melting from it, is your generic Lord option. Armor-piercing, anti-large melee expert, very capable at taking out single entities too, even if they're just smaller entities. This is going to be a very good Lord option if you want something aggressive, in the same way as the Celestial General, but also very focused on the Tiger Warriors, being able to support them, buff them up too, whilst buffing up yourself, and also doing a lot of damage damage. Very cool design. There is a little bit of clipping every now and then, which I imagine will get fixed by the time of launch. But again, following the design ethos of the just general Tiger Warriors, you can see them there. They've got charge defense versus large. They've got fight fire with fire. So you've got an augment there that is very useful when you're attacked by something with fire damage. So fighting against Chaos Dwarfs, for example, yeah, you've got that bonus coming in there too. I'm pretty impressed with the design of these lads too. Just in general, very, very quick, very, very killy. This is what I like to see. You want to see different types of Lord options. Cathay now has so many different types of Lord options. It's just getting more and more populated as time progresses. You never know if we might get in the future. That's obviously like a big thing that a lot of people do want. But we've got that representation in game now, which is about time. Monsters that have been known since, I think, what, 92, 93? Their benefits in battle have been quite impressive. They can easily handle a Chaos Lord. Obviously, keep in mind that this is without any campaign skills or tech tree updates and the rest. But it's good to see the generic base form being able to do that. Versus Large, I had him fight against Tamokan. Obviously, Tamokan being one of the strongest lords available in the game. And sure, this lord did suffer, but Tamokan is, of course, very good. The damage output is still incredibly impressive considering what Tamokan is. Their inclusion doesn't mean that you're going to miss out on Celestial Generals, Magistrates, or even the Shugengan. It just means that you have an extra different Lord choice to play around with. And again, this is so important when it comes to playing a game that you have, of course, played hundreds if not thousands of hours. The more types of Lord options, hero options, and unit choices, the more replayability you're going to get from it. Alright, so now we've got the legendary hero. She's coming in as an FLC. You don't need to buy the DLC. This is Tawan the Merciless. And she is going to be focusing around your Jade Warriors in campaign, alongside allowing you to have an anti-large hero, which is quite good at being in the thick of it. She's got her trident, but she also does use her sword with her animations. And she's got a lot of buffs and debuffs there to be able to hit the enemy target quite a lot. You can use her as a hero killer. But you can also use her there to deal with ogres, so very useful for Zhao Ming, for example. She is more than capable to deal with infantry. I do see her as a fair all-rounder. Her benefit, of course, is that you get a lot of charge defense. So if you like to corner camp with your Cathayans when you're dealing with ogres, for example, she's the perfect hero to have up front and personal. Get a choke point in and just have her hold down and hit certain characters without too much of an issue, like this, for example, Tyrant for the Ogre Kingdoms. So you'll be wondering what the difference between her and Setang is. Obviously, Setang is more like an artillery piece, where she's a little bit more mobile and able to be used in much more situations compared to Setang. I feel like I've used her more throughout my testing than I have the Watcher. The Watcher's still good, don't get me wrong, but it's good to have drastically different legendary heroes coming in. Campaign-wise, we can talk about her a little bit later, but she does buff up Jade Warriors, meaning that, yeah, just like how it's been handled with legendary heroes lately, you can form up specific targeted armies, so that way you've got more to play around with. You don't need, for example, a very high tier army with her. You can just have a lower tier, cheaper army to run around. And then lastly, for our legendary lord, we have Bashiba, the White Tiger. So this is a character that is new to the lore, just like Tawan and, well, not really the Tiger Warriors, but the two named characters are new. She uses additional hand weapons. She's anti-infantry. She's a melee expert. She's got, well, flaming attacks, magical attacks, she's got dodge. She is very, very fast, and she's very, very good at dealing damage. The fact here is she's got abilities tailored to just being much more destructive than most other lords that we've seen. She has also got a teleport, which, if Creative Assembly is watching this, update Skitterleap and give it to every single Skaven spellcaster for the love of God. But going back, yes, she is quite the melee powerhouse, and I don't use that as a light way of saying it. She is surprisingly very, very strong. Of course, this is something that we get to see when it comes to new characters introduced, but when you put her against, say, for example, some Chosen, some Chaos Warriors, you can see her do a lot of damage. The teleport itself is able to do a decent amount of AoE to disrupt enemy formations too, but that does mean that you can use that teleport to get in and out of combat. It's very cool, especially with certain maps that we do know are kind of poorly designed and allow for your characters to get stuck. If you've got her there, or if you just want to teleport out there just to snipe a spellcaster hiding in the back, There is a lot that you can do with this character, and it is absolutely impressive. She is also quite fast, and she gets all the other benefits that Tiger Warriors get, including the quick buff to charge speed, movement speed, and charge bonus. She's a terror. I've used her a decent amount in the campaign. She is an absolute terror. It is fairly nice to see a different type of legendary lord here, that's for sure, especially since, well, you know, it's mostly been the dragons. Now, I do hope that we get to see the other dragons at some point, because we are missing 2 active dragons, but it's good to see new, different playstyles, which are going to be much more different. So, yes, we do have a lot going on, especially when she starts fighting up some characters. I find her to be very, very good at single targeting. If you're dealing against a character like a Chaos Lord, she teleports kind of naturally when it comes into combat normally, which I feel like the AI doesn't know how to handle. Because she's teleporting fully, her model is actually moving, the AI has to turn around, and that gives her enough time to sweep and hit again. There's been times where I've seen her just demolish characters in a similar speed to how Scar Bloodwrath can do it, depending on how you can buff her up in combat. But I do feel like overall she's going to be a terror on the battlefield, and we're going to see quite a lot of Tiger love, which is cool. Again, the more different races, factions, cultures that we see in Warhammer Fantasy fully represented, the better. And, you know, these guys only were a footnote back in the day. It's great to see it. So, there's a lot more to come, obviously. There is going to be campaign showcases coming up soon, like I said. But if you want to see some unit testing live, I'll be live on twitch.tv/thegreatbookofgrudges. Pop by, say hi. I'll be live literally as this video ends. And we'll be checking out the units, testing them out in different scenarios. It's going to be the best time if you want to ask questions regarding them in battle. I can't answer too much regarding campaign until the campaign embargo drops, so that way I can actually physically show you guys all that type of stuff. But if not, I'll see you all again very, very soon, guys. Have a great day. There are a few battle videos I am planning on releasing tomorrow because, yeah, I've been enjoying playing around with the Tigers. Have a good one. Bye.